Everyone kind of treats the one wish rule like it's this cursed thing, and I understand why because of the context of the movie. But the thing is, the thing that Bear wishes for is cursed. Like taking away someone's autonomy, taking away someone's self, that's cursed.
I go to the movies every week, sometimes multiple times a week. So I watch a lot of movies, even movies I've never heard of or maybe didn't even immediately pique my interest. But as a creator on YouTube, the movies I get most excited about seeing and supporting are those made by other YouTube creators. So that means that I will be in theaters the moment YouTuber Kane Parsons' A24 produced movie Backrooms drops. I already have my tickets. And it means that I had my ass in the theater for an early screening of YouTuber Curry Barker's Obsession, which I should note was so excellently done. The screening, I mean. They gave us our own prop one wish from the movie, a stuffed cat to represent Bear's cat in the movie, and they came out and served a sandwich labeled cat at the exact moment in the movie Bear started eating a sandwich prepared for him by Nikki. If you've seen the movie, you understand the significance of that. She fed him his dead cat in a sandwich, that's what I'm saying. She fed him his dead cat in a sandwich. I also swiped several free Obsession posters from the movie theater that I bet you wish you had. And they streamed a live screening of Curry and the rest of the cast answering questions about the movie when it was done. So again, so well done. There's no doubt in my mind that the overall experience would have made the movie stick with anyone who got to attend, but I particularly loved it because there's something so incredible about seeing who created and produced their own shit, built their own audiences, invested in their art, and went out and made shit shake in a major way. Like writing, directing, and editing their own feature film. That is so amazing to witness. I see a lot of people online using the success of Obsession as proof that Hollywood should bet on more original stories and that people will come out for good original stories. And I'm not saying that it's not true that Hollywood should invest in original stories or that people will come out for them. I just think it's important we appreciate the specific context of Obsession's success. It's not just an original story produced on an indie budget of $750,000 that surprised Hollywood by already grossing over $38 million at the time of my writing this script, and way more by the time you see it. But it's an original story produced on an indie budget by a man who'd already built an audience of more than 1 million people who had tuned into his content and trusted his vision for years. And let me be clear, I am not saying that to discredit him, like some people mean to when they make it seem like it's some kind of unfair advantage that he had an existing audience. I'm saying that specifically to credit the fact that Curry Barker not only wrote, directed, and edited Obsession, which is fucking nuts in and of itself, but critical to his movie's success, in spite of Hollywood's doubts about independent and non-traditional filmmakers like him, was that he'd spent years already making and investing in his own work and building the audience that would come out to the theaters for him, whether the Hollywood machine pushed his shit or not, via his YouTube channel, That's a Bad Idea, where he's one half of the sketch comedy duo Curry and Coop. Coop was also in the movie. He played Ian, and he was great. I was incredibly impressed off the strength of my understanding of what it really takes for a motherfucker to get where this motherfucker has gotten, and at 26 years old, no less. This motherfucker on his second feature film. But on top of me being impressed off the strength, the movie was excellent. I'm talking script, themes, performances, cinematography, sound choices. And again, I want to remind y'all, this Curry was the writer, director, and the editor. Give that motherfucker his 10s, you hear me? 10s. But let the record reflect that I wanted to see Obsession the first time I ever saw the trailer without knowing a damn thing about who made it. The trailer in and of itself let me know that shit was finna bang. And not only did it not disappoint, 10 minutes in, I knew that motherfucker had him a hit. And he did. This shit is at the top of the box office playing with the big dogs. And we love to see it. And I'm not surprised. But what I was surprised to find out was that there are apparently people online copping pleas for bail and calling that man a victim and shit. No, baby. Not at all. But before we delve into this absolute nightmare of a relationship between Nikki and Bear, I want to talk about today's sponsor, Beducated. And honestly, this is actually a very fitting sponsor for this video because one thing this movie makes painfully clear is that so many people are walking around disconnected from their own desires, bodies, boundaries, and understanding of intimacy. May is International Masturbation Month, and Beducated is basically an online platform focused on sexual wellness, confidence, intimacy, and self-exploration. They have over 150 courses taught by actual experts, covering everything from self-pleasure to communication to confidence and relationships. And what I like is that it's not framed in a weird, shamey, or awkward way. It's genuinely educational, but not boring. Like, there are so many things people think they're just supposed to magically know about sex and pleasure, when in reality, nobody ever taught us most of anything useful. One thing I thought was interesting is that they even have courses specifically focused on understanding what you actually enjoy instead of just running on autopilot or doing what you think you're supposed to like. And let's be real, a lot of people are probably doing the exact same things they was doing when they was 16 and wondering why intimacy still feels disconnected, repetitive, or unsatisfying. So if you want to explore that side of yourself more, improve intimacy, or just learn more about your own body and pleasure, click the link below and take the quiz to get your personalized roadmap to sexual happiness. So what are you waiting for? Join Beducated today. You can click the link in my description, use the QR code on the screen to start using Beducated today. Again, you can use the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description to start getting your life right with Beducated today. Thank you for sponsoring this video, Beducated. Now let's get back to it. As much as I love this movie, I didn't intend to make a video about it. I really hadn't anticipated that there was anything that needed explaining, but color me corrected. Because not only have I seen many wonderful analyses and different theories I hadn't even thought about, and I also got several demands to break down who the real villain in this movie is. And I'm here to tell y'all that I see Obsession's protagonist Bear a little like how I saw the drama's antagonist Rachel, in that they're both mirrors, designed to anger people who have more in common with them than they think. Let me explain what I mean by that. Bear is not a quintessential villain per se. He doesn't in any way intend to harm Nikki or anyone else. He simply doesn't think about how or whether they'd be harmed because he's so consumed with quenching his own desires. Because he, like a lot of people, implicitly believe that being in love and what they feel like that love makes them do matters more than anything else. So Bear isn't a quintessential villain. He doesn't intend harm, but he causes a shit ton of the worst harm he could cause. And I think that's 1,000,000 times better than him being a villain with malicious intentions. Bear is like a lot of people in love who don't consider how their love that they view as inherently a good thing could be harmful to another person. That's what makes Bear and the results of his choices that much scarier. They not only could happen, they do happen in real life every day. We like to believe that harm only comes from evil or people with bad intentions, but that's not true. People who think their intentions are good, who think they love you, who are friends with you, bring about harm every day simply by forcing their desires onto others, by prioritizing their own desires over others. Someone doesn't have to be a villain to be the problem, and Bear is the perfect example of this. It's not that you have to rewatch the movie and convince yourself that Bear was a bad guy if you didn't see it. You don't need to convince yourself that he was secretly evil or something like that. No, you need to know that he was the problem and understand why he was the problem. Because not understanding the why is essential to why a lot of seemingly good men do bad things. I talk about this kind of thing much more in depth in my video on my main channel, Olay, called How Men Become Aziz, and sorry if you're interested. But let's stick to this movie and Bear. Plot of Obsession is very simple. Bear is in love with one of his best friends, Nikki. He's too pussy to tell Nikki he has feelings for her. So when he panics and misses his opportunity to tell her or give her this thing called One Wish that would let her make a wish on it, which he bought from an earthy low woo store as a gift for her, he ends up making the wish on the item himself that Nikki would love him more than anyone else in the fucking world. Now, I have seen folk kicking Bear's back in and using this moment as proof that Bear was a sick, wicked nigga doing nasty, evil work by wishing that in the first place. But I'm gonna explain why we either have to shoot Bear some bail on this one or indict a lot more people than Bear if we think this action was in and of itself unacceptable. If Bear was a nigga who believed in magic and truly believed that by making a wish on that toy, that gal would legit fall in love with him, then go ahead and call the charm once to reprimand this for illegally using his magic for his personal gain to force bitches to love him against their will. But we cannot reasonably believe that that young man thought that shit was gonna work. Him casting that wish was, for me, the equivalent of reading your crush's horoscope, trying to see it in the stars for y'all. Getting crystals from the tarot lady because she tell you it can help you get your mind back. Doing he loves me not on the flower. Praying God make whatever ain't shit you deal with your husband. Praying God send you a husband. And a million other things people do every day, calling themselves manifesting how they want shit to be with who they want it to be with. That wish was not inherently proof positive that he would have knowingly been willing to let an unknown entity possess her body and spirit just so he could date her. However, while I don't think Bear making that wish proves he had nefarious intent to deprive her of her autonomy, soul, or control her body, I do think it serves as at least some indication that Bear was not just in love with her and hoping she'd love him back. Bear was on some level already aware that she didn't reciprocate those feelings for him, and rather than just accept that, he preferred to just hang on to hope because he wanted to make fetch happen. And I point that out because in that regard, Bear is most. I don't don't think there's anyone alive who has not had feelings for someone that they know in their heart of hearts don't feel it back. But instead of accepting this and trying to move on, we pined over them and kept trying to hope and pray for another outcome. And while I am confident that most of us have managed to do that without getting our unrequited love possessed and turning our lives into a horror movie, I think the movie's trying to make us recognize how maybe something as routine as hanging on to an unrequited love can be a more harmful thing than we've ever stopped to consider because we're too busy believing our love is a gift the other person should want.
So easy to go down this rabbit hole of just becoming a slasher movie, but it's like, no. What would a person do if in the circumstances of all they want is you? And then, right, all they want is to be with you. So then it becomes manipulation. It becomes tactics of like, how can I get you to stay with longer? Like, can I use my self-harm to make you feel guilty? You know, things like that, instead of like, I'm gonna kill everybody.
So that's the first way that Bear was a mirror being held up to our faces. And it's also at the core of how his love harmed Nikki. When Bear makes this wish that Nikki would love him more than anyone else on the planet, Nikki immediately becomes a different bitch. He made this wish while parked outside our house where he just dropped her home. But the second he make that wish, she returns to that man car a weird bitch. And she's a weird bitch for the rest of the movie. And by weird bitch, I mean a clingy homicidal spirit who traps Nikki's real soul somewhere in a corner of her body so it could fulfill Bear's wishes by any means necessary.
Oh my God.
Now here's the thing. While I don't think that it's fair to expect Bear to have really believed that his wish on what he perceived as a woo-woo toy was responsible for Nikki's immediate switch-up weirdness and sudden insistence on getting back in his car and going home with him, he still had every reason to think this bitch is at minimum on literal fucking drugs. He's known Nikki for 102 years at this point. He knows she ain't never been on this run before, including that night. And then she's suddenly acting like a literal nut job. That should be enough for Bear to say, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't give in to her advances when she suddenly makes a move on him.
Think, Mark!
And to shoot him the tiniest piece of bail, he does initially try to reject her advances. And he is visibly hesitant and confused because he knows she's acting strangely. But that's also part of exactly why he should have continued to reject her advances. But he doesn't. Because even though he knows something ain't right and that something must be going on with her, fundamentally, because he wants to sleep with her and he's been preying on this moment his whole life, despite the overt weirdness, he fucks her. This is a really interesting part of the movie's events because it brings up an important conversation about consent that's larger and much more important than litigating whether this scene made Bear a rapist. And I'll explain why. A lot of people are pointing to this scene as proof that Bear was a villain because he had sex with Nikki without her true consent because she was possessed by whatever entity his wish brought about. And other people point to it believing he did nothing wrong here. I think that this scene is a perfect example of what I talked about earlier when I said Bear might not be a villain, but he is the problem. That people's love and good intentions can cause harm whether they intended it to or not. Let me break down what I mean. It's undeniable that Nikki was SA'd because Nikki did not give her consent to sleeping with Bear because she could not consent because her body was being controlled by an entity Bear unknowingly possessed her with. Bear did ultimately SA Nikki. Now, does that mean Bear intended to SA her or that he perceived what he was doing as SAing her? No, at least not necessarily. Because whilst Bear didn't know she couldn't consent because she was possessed, one could argue that Bear, as a friend who knew her, did see enough weird behavior out of her to come to the conclusion that she was maybe under the influence or at least not in her right state of mind because she was acting extremely out of character. So if for no other reason than being cautious, he should have erred on the side of caution and not had sex with her. He could have avoided the risk of even being perceived as taken advantage of. But because he's been so desperate for her to love him back when he knows she doesn't, he chooses to seize the opportunity because deep down, he don't know when, if ever, he'll get the chance again. And the result is Nikki gets violated, whether Bear realizes that that's what happened or not. The harm caused to Nikki is real, and it isn't mitigated by Bear's lack of awareness that she was harmed, his intentions, or his genuine feelings for her, which is real life. And that's what's most important about this event in the movie. Because in real life, people find themselves in situations like Bear, with people like Nikki, who aren't possessed by evil entities, but are under the influence, or in precarious situations, or not in their right state of mind, where it would behoove the Bears to exercise caution and not even risk taking advantage of them. But they prioritize their own desires over the red flags all over the room, or their desire to take advantage of the opportunity that maybe this won't happen again. Like, oh, she's more inebriated, so she's feeling looser.
You are one pathetic loser.
And they end up causing harm that they maybe didn't intend to cause, but they still did cause. Because again, I say, you don't have to be a villain to be the problem. How the saying go? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Again, I'm going to tell y'all, if this particular thread of this analysis is interesting you should go watch my video, How Men Become Aziz Ansari. But the point is, Bear essayed Nikki, whether you believe he did it knowingly or not, although I would consider it unknowingly, because from his perception, he doesn't know she's possessed by a demon and she's insisting they do this, so he views this as consent. And to be fair to him, even though she's acting very weird and that might lead other people to think maybe she's under the influence, maybe she's on drugs, maybe something happened, from his perspective, he spent the entire night with her and she was fine up until that point. She was fine in the car driving there. They'd had a whole conversation and she only suddenly became weird. So maybe from his perspective, the story she was giving him checked out. But nonetheless, the point is that Nikki was essayed. And the importance of this lesson, I think, is lost when we choose to use it as proof that Bear is an inherently bad guy, rather than an illustration of how men who believe themselves to be good can do bad things when they prioritize their own feelings and desires over everything else. I say that because it's a mistake to believe that the only men causing harm are bad ones, or ones who intend to cause harm. Good, well-intentioned men who think they love you can harm you too. And the best way for them to avoid causing those harms is by recognizing that they can and being cognizant of how they can. So we don't do them or ourselves any favors by attributing all men's harm to only bad men. Because when we do that, we teach them that their intentions matter most, and that's the wrong lesson, because it'll render them unable to see when they're the problem simply because they don't identify as villains who meant to harm you. Which is why Bear sleeping with Nikki against his own hesitation and wariness as to what was going on with her is another example of a mirror being held up to the audience, who should think long and hard about how they approach consent and sex in real life. But now that I've addressed that, I have absolutely no more bail to shoot Bear for the rest of this movie. Because after that first night, Bear quickly loses any kind of plausible deniability he initially had. And I'll tell y'all why. Watch the movie, because I ain't gonna tell you all the ways, but just know that Nikki goes absolutely bananas. Nightmare fuel. She goes from being the coolest bitch in the room to the nut bitch you cross the street when you see quick, fast, and in a hurry. Gal ain't wanna do nothing but crawl into this man's skin. So much so, Bear does come to the conclusion that it have to be this wish he casts on this gal having her acting like that. So he calls the phone number on the back of the wish box and tries to get help. And two things happened on that phone call that made me withdraw as defense counsel for Bear. First, and probably most importantly, is that Nikki is literally out her mind. Obsessed with this, standing in place all day while he worked, pissing and shitting on herself, waiting for him to come back. She feeding him his dead cat. She doing all type of mad as a hot as shit. But this man does not call to try to undo the wish or cancel the wish. This wanna amend the wish.
Wrong answer, forehead.
He and mine literally using a wish to strip this gal of her free will to make her love him. He just don't like that it got her acting OD crazy and scary. So at that point, he believes that his wish is the sole reason this gal loves him now, sexing him and dating him, and he is completely fine with that. He just wants it to be more comfortable. So let's be clear too, even if you thought the first act was an intentional essay on his part, the others are. Anyway, the assumed other times they sleep together that we don't see on camera definitely are. As if that wasn't already bad enough, the customer service wish tells him that he can't change the wish and it can't be broken unless he dead. But he tells him that he could let him talk to Nikki, implying that he has Nikki, the real Nikki, like the gal's soul with him, and the entity in her body that's with Bear is something else. Then he puts Nikki on the line and it's just her screaming. Literally screaming out in pain, because that's the kind of torture her soul is under, while Bear got her body possessed because he wanted her to love him. But instead of killing his fucking self, or at the bare minimum, trying his hand at a priest or an exorcist, Bear just takes his ass back home to scary ass, crazy ass Nikki. And now here's where Bear became irredeemable. Now imagine, Bear know Nikki is possessed by an entity that is obsessed with him. And he thinks that that's the woman to decide to sneak out of the house on late at night to meet another gal?
Boy, have you lost your mind?
Look here, but before Bear could even sneak out the house, he gets stopped. Not by the evil spirit Nikki, oh no. Evil spirit Nikki is asleep in the bed. But the real Nikki's soul breaks through just long enough to beg him to kill her and put her out of her misery before evil entity Nikki wakes up. And do you know what this mother fixed his mouth to say to her? His friend, like fuck he in love with her, a woman who been his friend for years, whose soul he has gotten trapped in her body. This knows Nikki is literally possessed, that her spirit is trapped in God knows where. He heard this gal's spirit screaming for help. He knows that she literally no longer in control of her own body. He knows this gal is literally in fucking purgatory somewhere while he's sexing up the evil entity in her body. And this heard his best friend, the gal he allegedly loved, desperate cries to kill her, to put her out of the misery he cursed her to. And this nigga had the nerve to be offended. Like, is it that bad being with me? Oh my God. Oh my God. Let me tell you something. What? If have nothing, they have audacity. Like, do we understand the level to which he now fully knows she's been cursed by this spell and possessed, to the point that he knows this is her real soul crying out to him, that he could respond to it casually, and his real response is just, so you don't like me? Is it that bad being my girlfriend? The audacity on that bitch is crazy. It was at that point that Bear deserved whatever he got. But you know who didn't? Sarah didn't. He set that poor gal up to get mashed right the up. Nikki pop up and send that poor gal to God. Gal just get into grad school finally, only to get her head caved the in, because just like Bear, she had to keep trying to force things with someone she knew didn't like her back. Cautionary tale, people, I'm telling you, you see it? Put that unrequited love down. You ain't want to end up with your eyeball all over the steering wheel with nothing to show for it but the I Really Miss My Nigga song. Which reminds me, Aaron, run the song.
I really miss my nigga. I really miss my nigga. White people you can sing it to, just change that N to a W. Miss my wigger.
So after Sarah gets mink-minked, Bear turns to his best friend Ian for help, who, by the way, was a real piece of shit, who turned out to have been sleeping with Nikki the entire time Bear ass had been pining over her. Let me tell y'all, Ian was the dirtiest dog, because he not only was secretly gal his best friend in love with, he was actively sabotaging his chances with her and shit. This is an evil world we live in here. And if it wasn't bad enough, he was a secret op. When Bear shows up to this man house with a one-wish Willow begging him to make a wish, undoing Bear wish, because Bear couldn't make the wish himself because you only get one. That's why they one wish. This nigga Ian grabbed the thing while his friends screaming, begging him, covered in blood, begging him to make this wish, undo it, blah, blah, blah. And he wished for $1 billion.
You raggedy bitch.
Oh, look here. But God don't like ugly, yeah? Because he got that $1 billion and was dead 10 minutes later. Because he decided to take his ass over to Bear house where Bear done tell him Nikki is over there killing niggas. So soon as Ian walk his stupid ass in that house, she shoot that nigga in the face. Yeah, she did. Yeah, she did. And I want to let the record reflect, I loved Cooper Tomlinson's performance as Ian. He was so very funny and he gave the show a little bit of edge. But his ass deserved that shot to the face, so no song for him.
Oh, Katie, here you go. One for you. And none for Gretchen Wieners. Bye.
Once Ian gets killed, Bear knows that ain't nowhere to go from there but hell. So he locks himself in the bathroom and takes the bottle of pills that his cat had accidentally consumed and died from in the beginning. And then Bear comes out the bathroom and drops down dead, finally freeing Nikki from her curse, but with her life now ruined, because she definitely gonna go to jail for the rest of her life, because she's surrounded by the dead bodies of all her friends, and ain't no court gonna believe her friend put a curse on her. You hate to see it, but not really, because like I said, the movie was great. There is honestly so much to discuss about this movie. So I encourage you to watch other videos and discussions about the movie, because I focused on a particular element while other creators tackled it from other directions. I wanted to focus on the dangers and harm that our unrequited love can cause others, because I think it's important that we as a society reckon with how dangerous yet commonplace ideas like love conquers all can be, and how and why we need to be cognizant, not to be consumed by our own feelings, and not to prioritize our desires over the consent and safety of others. It's really important to understand that people like Bear can be likable, sympathetic, maybe even pathetic, well-intentioned, or good people to those in their lives genuinely, and they can still end up wreaking havoc on the lives of others because they were consumed with what they want. This movie wasn't about Nikki's obsession. It was about Bear's, but it ruined both of their lives and the lives of those around them. Nikki didn't die, but her life sure is over. So go ahead and run the song one time for the one time, Aaron.
I really miss my nigga. I really miss my nigga. White people you can sing it to, just change that N to a W. Miss my wigger.
If you enjoyed the video you just watched, it's your lucky day because you just found it on one of 7 channels inside my Illuminati-verse. Subscribe to Illuminati, my flagship channel, where you'll find my magnum opuses like If Pretty is a Privilege, Ugly is a Curse, How This Didn't Age Well Destroyed Media Literacy, How Men Become Aziz Ansari, and more. Subscribe to Illuminati Pop for my TV and film essays on shows like How I Met Your Mother, Sex and the City, Desperate Housewives, You, Euphoria, Insecure, and so many more. You can also join Illuminati Pop on Patreon to watch all of my YouTube videos uncensored. Subscribe to Illuminati Bites for short, serious, and nuanced commentary on whatever the internet is spiraling about. Subscribe to Olay and Chill if you're trying to laugh and chill while unpacking the latest TikTok chaos. Subscribe to Illuminati Politics for sharp breakdowns of the political moments shaping our lives right now. Subscribe to Illuminati Extras for music commentary and industry deep dives. Subscribe to Olay and Friends to watch your favorite Black thinkers and creators dissect the culture. Subscribe to any or all the channels in the Illuminati-verse that speak to you, and I'll see you there. And you can also follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and Blue Sky at Illuminati. And you can also follow Illuminati Pop and Olay and Chill on Instagram and TikTok so you never miss a thing. If you enjoyed this video, it's your lucky day because there's way more where this came from. Click the video being recommended to you right now and subscribe to me so you don't miss future videos.